Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to another video by John. I am really excited because if you've ever been on my website, you know I have a page on there that says interviews. And on that page there's a link to the Passion Harvest interview I did with Luisa, and I that interview to me was very special because as I spoke to Luisa, I was just really kind of amazed at the love that comes from Luisa, and I was really kind of set back by it because when I met this guy years ago, years and years and years ago, um, I you could feel his presence, and Luisa, you can feel her presence when she talks to you. You can feel the love in her heart as she talks to you, and being interviewed by her, you feel so embraced and comforted as you're being interviewed by her. And I thought to myself, she's interviewed so many. She's gone out and she's talked to all these various people and brought herself to that endeavor. But in reality, there has to be a reason why, something to put her on that journey to do that work. And her story has to be fascinating to me. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and bring in Luisa. And hello, Luisa, how are you?
Hi, John. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful introduction. I feel like giving you a big hug.
And now you see what I mean, people. This is the Luisa I'm talking about. It's so true, though, Luisa. When you and I did that interview, I was just floored with what I could feel as you were interviewing me. And when I was in my regression, when I felt his presence, it was that same sort of thing. It was that feeling you get from someone. And I think you bring that to every interview.
Oh, thank you so much.
You were quite welcome.
That's so beautiful.
So let me ask you an honest to God question.
Oh, okay.
What inspired you to start Passion Harvest and start doing this? Well, what is your story?
I feel like a different person. That was years ago. Oh gosh, it's a long story. I call it I'm originally Australian. I
never would have guessed.
I now live in the south of France, but we'll go there probably later in the interview. I was living in what was called what would be perceived as a happy family, a married, comfortable, 2 children. I had a great corporate career, but I wasn't happy. For years, I wasn't happy, and I wasn't following my guidance or my intuition. And I blocked out all of that because I followed what I felt people wanted for me or what I wanted for my life. The universe has a funny way of pushing you, kicking and screaming if you don't follow it. And I thought, I at one stage, I thought I can't live like this anymore. I adored my children. I was in an unhappy marriage, but I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know how to stop the cycle, and I didn't know how to escape. The biggest thing is I think I started listening to Abraham Hicks,
Oh, right, yeah.
who was wonderful. And the pivotal point was when I realized that I create my reality. And I thought, if I create my reality, then I can uncreate what I've created, because I'm not happy. I don't want to get up every morning and drag my worried body to a corporate office that what would be perceived as beautiful, but I hated it. And I started distancing myself from people and my work colleagues because they thought I was weird and they didn't agree with me. And I realized the happiest moment of my day, when I started meditating for 5 minutes a day, I'd walk across the park at lunchtime and kick off my high heels and sit in the park. And I was so worried about what people would think of me at the time. I started meditating, but I'd pretend to look up at the sun and close my eyes in case any of my colleagues thought I was weird and I was just closing my eyes to the sun, but in fact, I was meditating. And I remember this was just the best time of the day. I just wanted to be in nature. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to understand what intuitively I wanted, not what everyone else wanted for me or what people expected from me. And I remember I looked on the ground and I picked up a gum leaf, which is a leaf, a gum tree. And it was just a simple gum leaf, nothing special, but it held that memory for me of nature and the happiest time of my day. And I took the gum leaf back to my beautiful corporate corner office and I hid it behind my computer just because I didn't want anyone to think I was strange. At that time, I was so terrified of what people thought of me. And anyway, I was eventually retrenched from the role. Terrified. And I packed up my office. There was nothing really there except a USB. And I saw behind my computer that gum leaf that I'd hidden there, and it was dead and shriveled. And I realized in that moment, if I'd stayed, I would have ended up like that gum leaf. I would have still been me, but shriveled, and there would be hardly anything left. And I still remember walking out of the office, beautiful office, what one would term beautiful corporate.
Right.
And I made a promise to the universe. I said, from that day forward, I will always, always follow my passion.
Wow.
And that's how I started Passion Harvest. I thought I was terrified. I was dizzy. I felt like I was drunk. But I thought, well, I just want to understand the meaning of life. I want to understand more of it. I was like that when I was younger, but through marriage and children, we often can lose ourselves. And I thought, I don't have time to read enough spiritual books. I just have to interview incredible people like yourself and learn as quickly as I can. And then I can not only learn, but I can inspire others. So that's how Passion Harvest was born.
That's amazing. I mean, and it's interesting is I was interviewed on somebody else's channel the other day. It was very interesting because when I was talking to him, I said something that was really interesting. I said, we go out and we learn and we experience, but it's when we start to actively live it that we start to experience more. And everyone's seeking the light show, the big spiritual experiences and all that stuff, but it's the living in the present moment and being in the now and representing love into the world where those things happen. And what I find so interesting about your story is, had you stayed in your environment at the corporate office, living up to other people's expectations, because one of the things you said in your story was that you were afraid they'd think you were weird, or you were literally afraid that they wouldn't love you for who you were authentically. And when you come back to being your authentic self, you start to find an abundance like you've never had before. And though it may not look the same on paper as a lot of things, or it may look better for all that matters, but it comes down to your authentic self as an expression into the world will always love you back. And for me, when I look at the world as what I put love into, I get love in return, but I also recognize that God is that love. And so by being in that expression, it gives it back to me. And that's what you're doing. Passion Harvest is one of my favorite YouTube channels. I mean, I watch it all the time.
Oh, thank you so much.
I mean, well, and it really has to come down to the fact that you are living into that truth of yours. And
yes, sometimes I regress, but I'm
Don't
not
we all?
perfect. And overcoming fear. Once you overcome big fears, the smaller fears absolutely get easier.
Yeah.
They really, really do. Can I tell you an interesting story?
I would love to hear your story.
Talking about fear, and this is a major game changer for me. I was terrified years ago of so many things. I was terrified of being poor, of being a single mother, of leaving my husband. And I had a dream every night for 6 months. And the dream was every night I'd see this woman on a cliff top. She was in a cage. She was naked. She was covered in blood, and she was scratching, trying to get out of this cage on the top of a hill, surrounded by incredible nature. And I called out to her each night, hoping she would hear me, but she never heard me. I never saw her face. I saw her, the rain fell on her face, and I saw her grabbing at worms to eat. And this went on for 6 months, and I felt so sorry for this woman. I wanted to help her. She was terrified and filled with fear, and she'd lived there for years and years, I don't know how long. And then after 6 months, I called out to her one night in my dream. It felt like it went for all night. We don't know how long dreams go for.
Right.
And I said, "How can I help you? Let me help you." And she looked at me, and I realized the woman was me in the cage. And when she looked at me, I saw that the key, the chain to the key to the door was around her neck. And she said to me something to the words of the effect telepathically. Is there a maker of keys that opens doors to the soul? Why have you left me here? And I yelled to her, I said, "You're free, escape." And she said, "But I'm too scared." And I said to her, "Get out of the cage." But she said, "I've been here for years and I can't even stand upright." And I said, "You can do it." I was completely baffled that this woman was me. And I held her hand, and we opened the cage, and we jumped. And then my life changed from that moment on.
Wow. That's an amazing story. It's an amazing story. Do you often get information like that in dreams, or is that...
I do. That was my biggest fears, of leaving my marriage and, changing my life. But I realized I was metaphorically in a cage, and we often have the key around our neck. It was, of course, we all know that, but this was so real. I mean, gosh, if this wasn't enough, I had to jump. I had to save this woman. And in essence, this woman was me.
Right.
It was horrible. She was mattered and destitute in a cage. And I screamed to her to help her, but she just wasn't listening. And eventually she did. And I helped me.
Yeah. I love this, and because one of the analogies I use all the time with my clients is the velvet cage, where you're inside your cage. You understand what the inside of that cage is, so you just live with the repercussions of the cage, and you get very comfortable in the repercussions because you understand how that world works. But you have any moment you can open the cage door and fly, and the realization is we get stuck in our fears and our anxieties and our subconscious beliefs, and those subconscious beliefs limit us, and there's the most famous Buddhist quote in history is, "Life is suffering." But when they actually translate it correctly, because Pali is a conceptual language, and in English is a literal language. When they translate it correctly, the actual translation is, "Life is suffering because of our habitual responses to our subconscious belief." And so we get into that space of this is the way the world is, and we struggle with all of that anxieties, and it comes down to that point where you have to say, "No, I am the creator of my experience, and I am the one stepping forward." And that's that's what that dream is that subconscious mind, in my mind. I God forbid I ever interpret somebody else's dream.
No.
Right. In my mind, it's that all that subconscious belief and fears and anxieties. In Sufism, they say that God is on one side of a veil and we're on the other side of the veil, and our life is the struggle against the veil, and the veil is our fear. And
here's an interesting and most powerful and rational thing. I still have fears, but I do. I recognize it, but generally I delve into the fear when I say, "You're taking the back seat. I appreciate that and I acknowledge that, but I'm the driver."
Yeah. Yeah.
Fears want to keep us safe. It's nice to be safe. We love to diarize and calendarize our life. I always wanted an Excel spreadsheet of the rest of my life. I would love that. Well, maybe not now. But our soul, our God, our essence wants us to grow and expand.
Yeah.
And when without physical harm, when we challenge ourselves, when we follow our intuition, our guidance, our divine guidance, this is how we grow and expand in our humanness. I truly believe we're here to be the full creative expression that we've come here to be.
Yeah.
We're so individual in the world. We're here to sing our heart's song. And there's 3 steps that I've learned. I don't always follow them, but I try to. Number 1, follow your passion.
Right.
Follow what feels good. It doesn't even matter if it's walking to the grocery store or taking a walk in nature. You never know what twists and turns can happen, who you might meet, what you might hear. And number 2, have no expectation of the outcome, because I found when you are set on the end goal or set on the outcome, it can block you from the synchronicities or the symbols or the signs the divine is trying to offer you that may be better than you've ever imagined. And number 3, always stay in a positive vibration. Yeah. And really, to me, that is the key to life, how to live.
I love that. I completely agree with you. I often tell people in private sessions, I say, what do you want? What would you like your future to feel like? Then come to that feeling now and live that feeling now, and whatever comes is going to match that feeling or better. And so it's a matter of you staying in that love space and love your future into your reality. And I love what you said about your passion. If you follow your passion. There was a famous custom motorcycle guy here in the United States. I'm not a motorcycle guy, but I was really fascinated by the art of motorcycle building for a while. And this guy, his big line that he always said was, "Do what you love, and the money will come." And it did. As he was doing his artwork, he became this famous motorcycle builder, and because he was just being passionate about what he was doing in life. I started the YouTube channel a year and a half ago. Right. And just completely passionate about it. In a year and a half, I have over 900 videos on that channel.
That's amazing. That's more than me. Gosh.
I was just really into it. What do I want to talk about now? I'm really excited.
I love it.
And so it really comes down to doing what you love. And, that little goofy little YouTube channel turned into a career for me.
Oh, I'm so proud and excited for you. And it's also, passion, people think it's set in stone. Passions change. On Monday, I was actually, just to give you an example, I had a good friend who was coming to visit in Portugal. I live in the south of France, and I'll tell you about my big move if you want from Australia. But
I'd love to.
I didn't want to disappoint him, and I was going to, he's just a very old good friend, and I'd booked the ticket, I booked the rental car, and I booked my puppy into the dog boarding kennel. Yeah. And I didn't want to do it. But I didn't want to disappoint anyone, and I had the plan and I had the goal, and this is what I was going to do. And it's not like I needed to do something for doing something, and I was grateful to have the opportunity. So Monday I drove to the dog boarding kennel, and stopped outside the kennel. And I had to speak in French because no one speaks English around here, and that's extra hard. And I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't want to drop my puppy off. I don't want to drive 2.5 hours to the airport. I don't want to catch the flight. I just don't want to do it for a week. And I stopped and I thought, what do I do? Can I really change this? Can I really not go? And I just decided not to. And it was such a relief. Changing plans is okay, whether it's something small like that or within reason, whether it's a career in time when everything's aligned. Life changes are okay. Sometimes we think that, being loyal and dedicated, it can often keep you stuck in the stuckness. Right. And I thought, oh my God, I can actually make my own decision. I can change my mind. It's not an ego thing. It's not like I made a mistake. It just what feels the lightest. Basically, I guess the simplest thing is what feels the lightest. Whether it's having people for dinner or going out for dinner or a meeting, what feels the lightest? And if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. It's taken me a long time to learn that.
Right. I love that, the simplicity of that. In my regression, one of the things that I said under hypnosis was, it's so simple. We have a hard time comprehending how simple it is. It's just be the experience, be that you want to have.
Yeah, we so try and complicate things.
Yeah, we make it more difficult. And in what you're telling me is that, when that moment of choice came, where you got into your feelings and out of your head, and
yes,
and what the story of Adam and Eve is so fascinating to me, because everyone always misses the actual meeting, right? They ate from the tree of knowledge and they got kicked out of paradise. They got in their heads and out of their hearts, right? And because paradise is a subjective feeling. My paradise might be sitting on the beach and somebody else's might be climbing a mountain, so it's the feeling of the experience. And by getting in your head, you kind of lose that feeling of it. And what you did was you acknowledged the feeling of not wanting to go. And then the second, and what I find really fascinating from a scientific standpoint, is you went, well, I'm not going to go. And you went, I feel so much better.
Yes.
Right?
Such a weight off my...
Well, to tap into what you said earlier about the fear, right? We have our body has a primal response to fear where we store air inside. And when we exhale, we're actually releasing our fears. And when you get into meditation, especially, there's that moment in meditation where you suddenly go, and you're there, right? That's the release of fear that brings you back to the source that is always there. And I love the fact that you made that leap from having to do with society or not wanting to let somebody else down, to just like, no, this doesn't feel right. You came to that place of going to the feeling. I love that.
Well, it took me all the way to get organized and book the trips and book the rental car until I stopped outside the puppy boarding house. I thought, I don't want to do this.
Right. I totally get that. Totally get that. I think, it's so fascinating how your life has unfolded in this way. So tell me about France. I'd like to hear about that.
Well, oh gosh, I'll try and keep it short. So
you take as much time as you want. I enjoy talking to you.
I call them future memories, and they started probably about 5 years ago in Australia. And I'd have these memories where I'd be walking along the street and I remember this man. It was the weirdest feeling ever. And he'd pick me up in a car. We'd drive through the forest, drive through trees, and arrive at his house eventually. This took a year or 2 years or 3 years. The first time it happened, as I was walking through a main city street, I thought I was actually being kidnapped, well, adult napped. And this man, I couldn't see his actual face, became so familiar. I called him Edward, and he'd pick me up from the airport. I realized eventually I wasn't being adult napped. These visions happened over and over again. And I knew this presence, this energy, this person in this lifetime, as Luisa was trying to contact me. I eventually arrived at his home. This is energetically in spirit form with God. And I'm not a voyeur. I didn't intend to do this. And I, in some way, hid in a cupboard and I could see through his whole house. And it continued for a year or 2 years. And then I'd eventually go to his bed. He was sleeping in his bed and I'd kiss him on the cheek and I'd say, Edward, come and find me. Several years ago, I get lots of emails, you probably do, to people reaching out to you, wanting to connect. This man reached out to me, wanted to connect and said, I'd love to chat to you about a near-death experience, and I'd like to help you on your quest. And I thought, well, that's how rude. I'm not on a quest. What are you talking about? But synchronistically, I'd just done an interview with Diana Durham, who wrote about the quest for beautifully about the Holy Grail. Very religious, the search for knowledge, which in essence is the search for love. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to meet you. I didn't sleep the night before, and I realized that this was Edward. Whether it was romantic or just some connection. And I lay awake all night and I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? Can I tell him that for the last 2 years, I've been meeting him on whatever spiritual plane, level of existence, quantum field you can imagine? And I thought, I can't do that. But then I thought, well, I call myself the passion ambassador. Am I going to choose fear or am I going to choose love? He might think I'm the weirdest person in the world. Or he might accept it. So we met on Zoom. We had a conversation. We talked. He told me about his near-death experience. And I said, look, there's something I have to tell you. I've seen you in my future memories for the last 2 years. And I know it's you. And he said, wow, that's the most amazing thing anyone's ever told me. At the time, it was COVID, so I couldn't travel for 1.5 years.
Right.
Eventually, I did. I traveled a lot before, and I came to this particular region in the Dordogne in southwest France near Bordeaux, and we visited. And he is my best friend now. When I came to this region, and I love Australia, it's an absolutely magnificent, beautiful country, something happened for me, and I realized that this land was my home. There was absolutely no doubt in my mind that this was my home and I had to live in this place. Another year, I went back and another year passed. My children are at university. They're older, obviously. My marriage ended well before that. And I packed up my life and I moved to the southwest of France. And I'm living in my home now. I bought a home and it is, as you said before, this is my paradise. I've traveled a lot, but I've never felt, and it's great when you travel and it's holiday, whether it's Bali or Hawaii, but I just knew that this land was calling me. And I often say to people when they say, oh, I live in a beautiful manor in the southwest of France. And they say, how did you find this place? And I often say, I didn't find it, it found me.
Yeah.
So that's my move to the south of France.
I love it, and it ties into something that I've thought for.
And he's my best friend, and he's American, actually.
Oh, really? Well, we won't hold that against him. But anyway, you said something that is something that I've thought about for years, because though I don't typically have the precognitive memory in the way that you did. I've had the experience where when I have a deja vu moment, to me, it's not a deja vu moment. It's a remember dreaming it. Yes. I remember dreaming it like at the deja vu moment, as opposed to waking up and remembering the dream. Right. So like the thing will happen. I'm like, this is like deja vu moment, but then I'll literally jump back to the moment where I had pre-dreamt it. And I love the fact that you said you were dreaming into the future, because I think that's what I was doing too. But I was just, I was late to the game and getting it.
No, not at all. I mean, if we come to the essence that time is not linear,
right?
If you can remember the past, you can also remember the future.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I think that when we come to that space of realizing that time and space are all infinite, it's like when I had my regression, one of the weirdest experiences of that was that I was physically on that beach. Yes. Looking at that man, and the conversation I was having with the regressionist was the thoughts in my head. So it was like the conscious awareness shifted. So rather than me thinking I was there thinking I was here. So it was like a complete swap. It was really kind of strange. So to have the visceral sensations of the wind and the smelling of the air and the stones under my feet in the real time meant that there is no time. There is no reality of time. It's just a matter of it's a matter of awareness more than time.
Life is so interesting, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Isn't it? So, where does what do you where you go from here? What's going to happen next? What are you doing next? Or do you even think that far ahead and are
I
just very
do.
present?
You know, I'm at the moment, I'm loving a simple life. I
Yeah.
have 11 hectares or 40 acres of pasture and forest, and I love gardening, and I work on Passion Harvest. I'm actually working on an event, hopefully for September or October this year in the southwest of France, which is
Oh,
only 6 hours from New York. Um, I have clients that I work with, mentoring. I've got a new program called Mystical Mastery, which I love, to be the best version of yourself. So I do that, but I also love walking in the forest and spending time in nature and just sometimes just being, because I feel sometimes in the being, then we're our most creative self. And when I'm inspired, then I have the luxury of taking creative action, or I allow myself to do that. I don't see that. I mean, I do have friends, and I'm not an unsociable person. But I like being alone as well. I haven't had that for a long time, and it's such a luxury.
Isn't it though? COVID was so good for me.
Mhm.
It let me have. It gave me a reason to not be out in front of people. Before COVID, I had. Well, I mean, 20 years ago when my first story first came out, I was all over the country speaking at the
Yeah.
Association for Research and Enlightenment and all kinds of places. And there was a book written about me, and I discovered that everyone was too focused on who I was and not what I was talking about, not what I was teaching. And I discovered that I was just becoming a crutch for people. They just wanted to go see me because of the past life. And I left. I became a corporate speaker. And the year before COVID, I had traveled 200 days doing speeches all over the country. And it
Wow.
was like I was never home. It was just, I have a son. And so it's like, it was very hard. It was very hard. COVID hit, and it was just like you dropping the dog off, or not dropping the dog off. I was like, oh God, thank God for COVID. But coming into the house and suddenly having that decompression time, I went back into my spiritual work full time. And it was the thing that the partial catalyst. I had some other very important people who came in and kind of nudged me with a cosmic 2x4. It hit me in the head. Right, get back to work. It's interesting how when you're in the midst of all the craziness of our society, how something comes along that just allows you to suddenly be with yourself. And you have that
Yes.
expression of just going, I really like me. I really
And
like who I
I'm
am.
getting to know myself and what I like, and I'm not
Yeah.
doing it for anyone else. I mean, honestly, I'm happy chatting to the local apple farmer who has
Yeah.
such a wealth of knowledge and information, and no preconceived ideas or what clothes I'm wearing. He doesn't care. He's just a kind person.
Right. Yeah. And isn't that beautiful to find that person right next door?
Beautiful. Or like the other farmer, I was digging a vegetable garden the other day, and he said, you can't do that by yourself. And he got his tractor and he brought over a container of cow manure on his big, just simple, kind people. That means so much to me.
Yeah. And that is the secret to living in this world, love
You
one
don't have to
another.
read all the spiritual books, but just to be kind. That's really what it's all about.
And the Dalai Lama said, my religion is simple, my religion is kindness. And and even Muhammad in the Quran says, he who knows not kindness has no faith.
Mm.
It comes down to that idea of I agree with you. Just and hey, one more. This guy, I leave you one commandment: love one another.
Yeah.
Just go out in the world and be kind and care for each other and take care of one another, and the world will shine so bright and change to a kind place when we all start doing that. Well, Luisa, you are amazing.
You're amazing. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. I just feel so calm and meditative and relaxed talking to you. I'm going to take my puppies for a walk in the forest later.
Oh, good. Just don't drop them off at the boarding place.
No.
Well, it has been absolutely lovely. I'm so glad we had a chance to do this, and I'm so glad that you're feeling well, because I know we had to reschedule because you weren't feeling well a long while ago.
Thank you,
So,
and thank you so much, and thank you to your audience for listening. I really appreciate it.
I'm just happy to bring you to them, because I think you're spectacular.
Oh, thank you, John.
So, guys, thank you so much. I really wanted you to get to meet Luisa, because I just think she's spectacular. And you probably, from the interview, you probably saw what I was seeing. That feeling that she gives, that love that she gives, that expression that she gives, is an example. It's you hear me often say, our job isn't to save the world. Our job is to make our part of the world so bright that people take notice and say, what's going on there, right? And that's what I think Luisa does with Passion Harvest. Make sure you go check out her channel, hit that subscribe button when you're there, and watch all of her interviews, because there's so much to learn, not only in the person she's interviewing, but in the way Luisa interviews, because the feeling that she gives is living the way, the truth, and the life, as this guy would say, right? It is literally being that expression of that love. And you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. The Level Up Spirit channel is solely funded by your generous donations and purchases of private readings and merchandise. To help out, go to johnofnew.com or use the donation link in the description below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.